Good evening, everybody. On tonight's Air Raid Hour, we'll be talking the Bills linebacker room, the contract situations for the Bills linebackers beyond 2025, and we will take a quick look ahead at some of the top prospects in college football at the linebacker position coming up for this season. But first,
Welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Tilt Money, for tonight's normal Monday edition of the Air Raid Hour, 9 p.m. Judge still working on getting his computer situated. RJ comes in and says, "Good evening, everyone," and I have a good evening to all of you tonight. Tilt Raid Hour, yes. See, the thing with Joe's name, which I'm very jealous of, by the way, Joe, your different names you can come up with for your that rhyme with Joe. There's not so many that I can come up with like you can. And so I am jealous of that. You come up with some very creative names to rhyme with Joe. I don't have that ability, but you know what? We're going to make it happen and we're going to make it work tonight. Last week we had a great show. Comment section was really engaged on talking about the Bills running back room. And tonight we're going to talk about linebackers, but some funny comments last week about the running back room. And also some constructive criticism for me personally on the YouTube comments. Someone came in and told me I was boring and I needed to get a little more flavor. So I don't know what that means. I don't know. I'm not a hot take artist, as you guys know. Judge is a little bit more, maybe more of the conspiracy theorist, but I don't necessarily think we're not really a hot take artist type of show. I think we're fair in our criticisms and are fair in our praise to the Bills. And so I don't think anybody who watches the show regularly would say that we're homers, and I don't think anybody who watches the show regularly would say that we're haters either. I think we keep it pretty uh pretty well even keeled here on the Air Raid Hour. And so tonight we're going to kind of continue our summer scouting series. Last week we did running backs, kept it to a nice 45 minutes or so show. Tonight we're going to do linebackers, and you may wonder, like, well, why are we doing linebacker? Why are we taking a look at linebackers tonight on tonight's show? And again, we've got mandatory mini camp starting up, I believe, tomorrow. So there'll be news on that we can talk about next week. But as we kind of go through the summer, we'll be doing more of these shows. And tonight we're going to be looking at linebacker a little bit. And as you guys know, the pre-draft process, we did not spend a lot of time on linebacker for the 2025 draft. It was clearly a position that the Bills were pretty deep at. Didn't expect them to really make a ton of investments in the linebacker position in the draft, and they ultimately didn't, right? They did sign undrafted free agent Keontae Jenkins as part of like the overall draft process, but they didn't draft anybody at that position, and they didn't really sign anybody either in the offseason. So we've got some things to talk about at this position now as we kind of take a quick look ahead in 2026. But yes, we've got mandatory camp starting tomorrow. And so we'll see. Obviously, the big news is whether James Cook will show up or not. There's some circling the wagons reported on Twitter earlier tonight that they expect him to be there at camp. Sources say that he will be there at camp. So we'll see what happens with James Cook at mandatory minicamp. But tonight's show is going to be about linebacker. And as we did last week with running backs, we start by kind of taking stock of what the Bills linebacker room looks like beyond 2025, right? As we kind of think about how we want to start and who we want to start looking at in college football this upcoming season. Who should we be paying attention to at that linebacker position. And the reason being is because the Bills may have some needs at that position come 2026. So let's take a look around that room, starting with the contract situations for the linebacker room. And as we know, in March, Matt Milano reworked his contract, ended up reworking his contract to be a 1-year, $6 million odd deal for 2025, making him a free agent, unrestricted free agent in 2026. 2 void years on Matt Milano's contract. But he will be an unrestricted free agent in 2026. So hard to believe Matt Milano will be starting his 9th season already in the NFL. It feels like still that he's not been around that long, but he has been entering his 9th NFL season. He obviously is going to end up being an unrestricted free agent beyond 2025. Original contract kind of had him slated to be under contract through 2026. That was changed. So now an unrestricted free agent heading into 2026. So you got Matt Milano, the former All-Pro. What are the Bills going to get out of him this year? I thought that he looked pretty good at the end of last season by my eye, coming back from that injury. And I thought finished the season pretty well. And I expect, barring, again, this is something that's kind of plagued Matt Milano throughout his career, some not obviously career-threatening injuries per se, but some pretty significant injuries over the course of his career. But when he's on the field, he has been a really, really, really good player for the Bills. Certainly got their return on investment with him as far as where they drafted him. The contract pretty reasonable as well. So wishing Matt Milano the best. And as Pete says, I agree. We've been robbed of a couple amazing Milano seasons here. And so let's hope he has one more really good one in store for us for 2025, as maybe he rides off into the sunset or finds a home elsewhere. Hate to think about that, but that reality could be, that could come to fruition come 2026. So Matt Milano not under contract with the Bills in 2026, although they will be taking some cap hits for him with those void years. Then you got Terrel Bernard, obviously, who just signed the extension. He's under contract through 2029, in which case he'll be a free agent in 2030, I believe, is someone can fact check me on that, but I believe that's the case. So he is the centerpiece right now for that linebacking unit beyond 2025. Then, of course, you have I would say, earning the favor of more Bills fans in the way he played last year, and that's Dorian Williams. Funny, and one of the guys I'm going to talk about tonight has been comped to Dorian Williams in college football for 2025, but we'll get to that later. Dorian Williams under contract through 2026, but then becomes an unrestricted free agent after 2026. So you really only have this year and one more year left on the current contract for Dorian Williams on that 4-year rookie deal. I believe he's been playing well, ascending, I would say, is how I would kind of describe him. Very athletic, very aggressive. I like his swagger. I like his style, and can see if he can continue to improve on his good play from last year. I think that he will get opportunities this year. So you have Terrel Bernard and Dorian Williams still with the team for 2026. Baylon Spector, last year with the team right now, under contract as far as his current contract is concerned. 2025 is technically his last year with the team, unless they do bring him back, which at this point would be a little surprising, I would say, given his injury history. Has shown a little bit of flash on the field, but just has not been able to stay on the field. Baylon Spector will be an unrestricted free agent in 2026. So you got Milano gone, you've got Baylon Spector gone, and then it brings us to the next kind of 2 interesting players, I would say, in the linebacking unit, and that's Ulofoshio, who we drafted last year in 2024. So he's still got term with the team. He's got 2025, obviously, and then 2026 and 2027. I still think there is and maybe an opportunity for Ulofoshio to earn some defensive snaps in his tenure as a Bill. I believe only appeared in 4 games last year, was a game day inactive for most of the season last year. We'll see if he can maybe crack, a little bit more game day roster situation this year. If anything, it's probably still going to be mainly to play special teams, but as a fit in the pre-draft process, thought it was a pretty good fit. And that was obviously the case from a lot of reporting as well. RJ says, we've been robbed a bunch of prime seasons from our elite defenders, Milano, Trey, Micah, even Vaughn. And that's 100% true. And it's kind of been the downfall somewhat of this Bills. If you want to put a black spot on sort of the Sean McDermott, Josh Allen era, obviously, playoff success aside, one of the black spots probably on this team is that they've had some pretty significant injuries on the defensive side of the ball that have caused guys to miss, significant games. Daquan Jones, throw him into that mix as well. I mean, missed almost an entire season 2 years ago as well. Came back in December, if you remember that one, after he got injured in that Jaguars London game as well. So yeah, Daquan Jones, another one who missed significant time on that defense. We've had some guys that have missed some significant time on that defense, and it's unfortunate. So you got Ulofoshio, who is still under contract for term through 2027. So you start to kind of put together sort of the core linebacking unit beyond 2025, and you start to look at Terrel Bernard, Dorian Williams, Ulofoshio. Those are kind of like your 3 main guys right now. And then you've got obviously Buffalo Joe Andreessen, who made the team last year. He's under contract through 2026 and becomes a restricted free agent in 2027. So you do have Joe Andreessen still beyond 2025, under contract through 2026. I don't know that it's a given that Andreessen makes the team this year. I certainly think it's a good omen for him, at least to make the team, that the Bills really didn't put any significant free agent dollars or draft capital into this position whatsoever. And maybe it just, again, has to do what he did last year and probably will make the team again. And then you've got Keontae Jenkins, who was a UDFA, who's technically under contract for term through 2027 as well, and becomes a restricted free agent in 2028. That's, of course, if he stays with the team for that long, and we expect him to maybe be a practice squad player. So the linebacking unit gets pretty thin, after 2025 with the departures of Milano, Spector no longer in the mix, and then you got Dorian Williams, who's only here for 2026. So it is maybe time to start thinking about linebacker again in the draft. When we lost Tremaine Edmonds, that at the time felt like a pretty significant loss, and we were fortunate to have Terrel Bernard step in, a 3rd rounder. And again, last year, another 3rd rounder the year after, with Dorian Williams getting picked. Those picks at the time, I think a lot of people scratched their heads, including myself. I'm not going to lie. I was a little surprised I would say I was more surprised at the Terrel Bernard pick than I was the Dorian Williams pick. But those have both we've been fortunate to have both of those guys now, as they kind of look to really be forming the core of this linebacking unit beyond 2025, at least as it stands right now. So we will start to talk about linebackers in college this year. We will certainly do more work, which is really not much at all, on linebackers in this year's pre-draft process. And thankfully, that sort of, I would say, effort being put into doing the work on other positions that the Bills needed was well worth our time, more so than looking into the linebackers from the 2025 class, because the Bills didn't draft any. So thankfully, that was the case for us as far as our prep. But now we're going to do some prep on linebackers for the 2026 class. And tonight I'm going to do what I did last week and take you all through about 10 or so names. It's not going to be exhaustive. We're going to do similar to what we did last week, go through about 10 names, give you some things to look out for these guys who look to be some of the top prospects at the linebacker position in college football this year. We're not going to hit them all. So if there's others that you want to throw the names into the ring for people we should be paying attention to, that's great. We'll do that. And we'll start talking about that in just a second. But first, let's hear from our sponsor.
What's up, y'all? Khalil Shakir here. When I want Buffalo pizza, it's got to be Picasso's.
Picasso's.
Khalil Shakir. Your team, our pizza. Picasso's. This is Buffalo Pizza.
That is PicassosPizza.net to order your Picasso's Pizza online or for locations in the greater Buffalo area. PicassosPizza.net, that cup and char pepperoni that we all love. Get yourself some Picasso's Pizza this weekend or whenever you're doing. I'm going to be watching the F1 race this weekend, watching the U.S. Open. Maybe I'll get myself some Picasso's Pizza. So let's talk about some linebacker prospects in college football for the 2025 season that we should be paying attention to as we kind of look ahead to the 2026 draft with a little bit of summer scouting. So we're going to start, we're going to just go ahead and dive right into this. First guy on the list, he's the guy that I put on the show graphic for tonight. The consensus as of right now, probably top linebacker in the 2026 class. And again, all of these things will change. These rankings and these projections and everything will change a lot over the course of the college football season and as we get into the pre-draft process for 2026. But what we're going to talk about right now is who we should be looking at going into the 2025 season, that the people and the scouting outlets and different draft communities and of the like sort of project right now. And so the first guy on the list is the guy from the graphic tonight, the show graphic tonight, and that's Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. A lot of people probably familiar with him watching college football last year. 17 tackles for loss, 8 sacks in 2024. Both NFL Draft Buzz and PFF currently have Hill as their top-rated linebacker for the 2026 class. PFF has Anthony Hill Jr. as their 13th overall prospect as it stands right now. And I will just say, sort of as I started looking into this linebacking class and prepping for the college football season to look at linebackers, it does seem like this year, and when I say this year, the 2026 class, the 2025 season, does appear to have a bit more top-end talent at the linebacker position than the 2025 class did with Jihad Campbell and a few others. It does seem like the 2026 class is going to be a bit stronger at the linebacker position than the 2025 class. So that's, at least in my mind, a good thing if you're the Bills and you're looking for a linebacker in this upcoming draft. This guy entered Texas as a 5-star recruit. Impact as a true freshman, constantly around the football, run defender, pass rusher, coverage, 32 coverage stops, tied for the most among FBS linebackers since 2023, and 10 sacks and 5 forced fumbles are tied for the most among those in the Power 4. 127 plays where he made first contact on the ball carrier in that same span, the most of any returning Power 4 linebacker in 2025. He's a versatile athlete. He can do a lot of different things for the Longhorns defense, and I wouldn't be surprised if he found his way into the first round in the 2026 draft. He's 6'3", 235 pounds, a really good athlete. Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas, I think, has a good chance to be the first linebacker picked in the draft next year. He will certainly be someone I am keeping my eye on as this college football season approaches, and is early, obviously, but one of my favorites so far that I've looked into, and shouldn't come as a surprise. He's consensusly right now the top linebacker from multiple outlets, but Anthony Hill Jr. certainly expecting him to have another good season. Next up on the list is Deontay Lawson from Alabama. So obviously we know Jihad Campbell, was the guy who went in the draft this past year. Deontay Lawson was the signal caller for this Alabama team last year, right? He's coming back now for his fifth season playing rather than entering the draft last year. PFF has him as their 21st overall prospect, and both Draft Buzz and PFF have him as their linebacker 2 in this class. 67 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 passes defended at least in the past 2 seasons. So he's done that for 2 seasons in a row at least, and nearly 200 tackles in his career at Bama. Team captain, as I said, he was the defensive signal caller last year, 6'2", 239, man the middle of that defense, and is a really, really good prospect. Alabama has put out a lot of good linebackers over the years. A lot of them have been more of the kind of the thumping type, but Lawson is a little bit more, I would say he's a little bit more fluid than some of the linebackers that Alabama has put out in, the last 8 to 10 years. So a really good, solid prospect there in Deontay Lawson. Let's see what he does to kind of round out his career at Alabama this year. Again, going into his 5th season. So he's going to be a bit of an older prospect, but now will become the centerpiece of sort of that Alabama, the middle of that Alabama defense on that middle, on that middle tier. So Deontay Lawson, a name to keep your eye on. This next guy I'm going to talk about is an interesting one, and that's Dorian York from Texas A&M. He's still only right now 19 years old. He'll be 20. He'll turn 20 during the season, but he will only be 20 years old if he enters the NFL draft next year in 2026. Over 150 tackles and 19 tackles for loss over the past 2 seasons. PFF currently has him as their linebacker 3. NFL Draft Buzz has him as their linebacker 4. He's on the 2025 Lott Trophy Award watch list, which is only 42 players are nominated for the watch list, and only 13 linebackers are put on the list. And this is the only major defensive college award that factors in, the character of the player. So it's not just purely a statistical on the field type of award. And it's not like the Walter Payton Man of the Year award in the NFL, but it does incorporate what you do off the field. And I think the Bills will really like that about Dorian York. He's a little bit shorter at 6 feet, 235, but the dude can tackle. I mean, like, you turn on some of the Texas A&M games, this guy's always around the ball. I think the Bills will really like this guy for his tackling prowess. 11th highest tackle grade of any linebacker, that's those drafted or not, in 2024, with at least 600 defensive snaps. NFL Draft Buzz physically compares him stylistically to Chris Paul Jr. from this past draft and Smile Munden Jr., who I liked from this past year's class. He's been a starter in each of his first 2 seasons, but like Anthony Hill Jr., he was just a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. York has proven those rankings wrong in leading all returning Power 4 linebackers with 59 run defense snaps since 2023 and 122 first contact on the ball carrier, tied for 4th in the same group. I said stocky, 6 feet, 235, but a really, really good tackler, and I could see the Bills really falling in love with a guy like Dorian York. So if you haven't had a chance to watch any of Dorian York from 2024, turn on a couple games. He's really fun to watch, and I think he'll be fun to watch again. That Texas A&M defense had a lot of good defensive linemen in front of him last year. I understand that. Obviously, we talked about those guys in the pre-draft process this year, but I think Dorian York will be a really fun prospect to watch this year from Texas A&M. So keep an eye on him. Next guy up, CJ Allen from Georgia, the linebacker 3 on NFL Draft Buzz and linebacker 6 on PFF for right now. PFF's 85th overall prospect. 76 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 4 passes defense, and an interception in 2024. 6th highest run defense grade of all linebackers last year in college football with at least 600 defensive snaps. I mean, clearly, part of being in that Georgia program, like, you expect that succession plan within Georgia to kind of the well doesn't run dry, right? And it hasn't run dry. Obviously, Jalon Walker was the linebacker that everyone talked about this past year. He went into the draft. That's fine. But really, CJ Allen should be ready to cement himself as a centerpiece linebacker on that Georgia defense this year. Now that Walker is gone, does need to improve a bit in his coverage skills. I'm not going to lie on that front. But he did show a little bit of growth in that area this past season. So we'll see what he can do in 2025. 6'1", 235 pounds, so decent size there. And we'll obviously be anchoring or be in the middle of what should be another really good Georgia defense this year. CJ Allen from Georgia, a guy to keep an eye on. Next guy is a very interesting guy, and I will say, funny name, can laugh at, the hair, and his nickname is actually Sunshine, apparently, and that's Whit Weeks from LSU. NFL Draft Buzz linebacker 7, PFF linebacker 5, 66th overall prospect for PFF. 62 solo tackles last year, 3.5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss in a solid 2024 campaign where he played 13 games. He did have a late season injury, but not going to really impact his availability for the start of 2025. It's a really interesting situation for me. He has 2 brothers on the team as well that he's going to play alongside. I believe it's the first time in LSU program history that that's happening. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I read that. He's been on an ascending trajectory. A top 15 pass rush grade of linebackers last year with at least 600 defensive snaps, 6'2", 228. So weight-wise, kind of in that range that the Bills would like, maybe at that will backer position that is currently filled by Matt Milano. But Whit Weeks, a guy to keep an eye on from LSU. And then as we get to his teammate next, Harold Perkins Jr., another linebacker from LSU. He's a bit more versatile than Weeks, can play in coverage, can rush the passer. And this is the funny one. NFL Draft Buzz physically, stylistically compares Harold Perkins Jr. to who? Dorian Williams. That was one of their comps for Harold Perkins Jr. from LSU. This is a guy that moved from edge to linebacker from between his freshman season and his sophomore season in 2023. Tore his ACL in early 2024, 4 games into the season. So we're coming into 2025 with some question marks about Harold Perkins Jr. He's played 2 different positions. This will be really his 2.5 full season playing linebacker. But he's accumulated some nice statistics over his first couple, 2.5 years, 164 tackles, 27.5 TFLs, 13 sacks. SEC academic honor roll as well 3 times. So he's a study off the field. The Bills will like that. So the big question mark for Harold Perkins will be, how does he bounce back after tearing that ACL early in 2024, which again allowed a guy like Whit Weeks to see the field a bit more as well. But those 2 guys together should be an interesting pairing to watch this year at LSU, with Weeks and Harold Perkins Jr. I'm especially interested in seeing how Perkins comes back from that injury. And especially interesting because usually, I would say usually, it's not all the time, you see guys like move from safety maybe to linebacker or something like that. It's very interesting to see a guy who played edge move to linebacker outright. But Harold Perkins Jr., a guy that did that and did so successfully. So looking forward to that. Next guy on the list, I will say this right now, probably, I talked about last week about some of my early favorites, at the running back position. I kind of gushed a little bit, I would say, over Jonah Coleman from Washington last week. He was kind of my favorite at the running back position to watch, going in to watch this season. And I think this next guy at linebacker might be that guy for me at this position. And that's Kyle Lewis from Pitt. Maybe had one of the best defensive seasons last year that no one talked about. 101 tackles, 7 sacks, 16 tackles for loss, and 4 interceptions. I mean, just an absolutely incredible season for Kyle Lewis at Pitt last year. Linebacker 10 for PFF right now, their 107th overall prospect. The thing with Lewis, 6 foot 225, so he's a little on the smaller side. But again, Matt Milano, he came in and he's not really that much bigger than that, right? I mean, Matt Milano is listed as 6 foot 221, right? So if you're talking about a guy that maybe could be the heir apparent to Matt Milano, Kyle Lewis from Pitt, who, by the way, the Bills are very familiar and obviously favor that Pitt program. They drafted DeMar Hamlin, obviously. They had Dane Jackson, right? They aren't going to shy away from taking defensive players from Pitt. And at 6 foot 225, a guy that had 100 tackles, 4 interceptions, 16 tackles for loss, can really do anything on the football field. Kyle Lewis, to me, is an early favorite as a really good fit for the Bills as an heir apparent to Matt Milano if they want someone who can kind of complement the Dorian Williams skill set and size and have a guy that could, fill sort of that type of role that Milano had to then put in that trio with Terrel Bernard. Kyle Lewis really checks a lot of boxes for me, and I'm very excited to see how he can follow up that junior season he had last year, which was incredible, and no one talks about it this year as he enters his senior year at Pitt. So Kyle Lewis, certainly a name that I'm going to be very drawn to this year in watching college football. All right, couple more names to get to, and then we'll kind of wrap up here tonight. Sonny Styles is next on the list from Ohio State. This is a converted safety to linebacker. Linebacker 15 for PFF, but linebacker 9 for NFL Draft Buzz going into the season. PFF's 145th overall prospect, so a little lower down on the list. Limited action in 2022 before playing safety in 2023 and then converting to linebacker last year. And he really blossomed, right? Becoming one of Ohio State's best defenders. The Bills will love that sort of background that he has in playing different positions. We saw them kind of take a little bit of a Swiss Army knife defensive back in Jordan Hancock from Ohio State in this past year's draft. Sonny Styles sort of at that linebacker back 7 type of player. 100 tackles, 11 tackles for loss last year, 6 sacks and 5 passes defended in a very impressive junior season. How will this guy finish out his career at Ohio State? Obviously huge expectations, as there always are on Ohio State program every year. And how will he perform this year, and only which will be his second full season playing linebacker? And just the athletic profile jumps off the charts for you, right? He's 6'4", 235, and potentially could be a sub 4.5 40 guy at that position. So you do start maybe thinking about like a guy like Tremaine Edmonds athletically, who you could compare a guy like Sonny Styles to. Not quite as thick as Tremaine Edmonds, but athletically, really, I think profiles fairly similarly to a guy like Tremaine Edmonds, and that's Sonny Styles, Ohio State. Keep an eye on him. Next 2 guys maybe are 2 guys that you hadn't thought about or hadn't heard of, and if you have, that's great. And that's why we do these shows, right? To kind of talk about these guys. And the first one is Isaiah Glasker from BYU. A taller linebacker at 6'5", 235, but had a good sophomore season a year ago. He's only going to be a junior this year. Last year, 70 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and 3 picks. PFF's linebacker 13 and 130th overall prospect right now. He does have a menacing presence. He had the 12th best coverage grade of all linebackers in 2024 with at least 600 defensive snaps. Was the Alamo Bowl defensive MVP in 2024. Was a Sports Illustrated honorable mention All-American in 2024 and a really good blitzer. If you watch how he blitzes, it does remind you a little bit of Terrel Bernard in a little bit of a bigger package. Maybe really interested to see how he builds on that really good 2024 and if he can kind of maybe cement himself as a top 10 linebacker in this class. But Isaiah Glasgow is interesting watch from BYU. If you watch some of the games from BYU, I think what does really stand out for me is his closing ability on ball carriers and his ability to blitz and just find spaces to cut through that offensive line and that offensive front. Really good in that regard. So I get Isaiah Glasgow from BYU. And then the last guy I'll kind of talk about a little bit in depth tonight is Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech, a team captain last year, started all 13 games, 2024, 127 combined tackles for Jacob Rodriguez last year, 10.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, a really impressive junior year campaign. Third highest pass rush grade of all linebackers in this class with at least 600 defensive snaps and 22nd in coverage grade. So pretty solid all around. Nice combination of skills to work with. PFF has him as their linebacker 12 right now, 110th overall prospect, all Big 12 first team, coaches and AP in 2024. And how can he finish off his college career this year at Texas Tech? Jacob Rodriguez is a guy to keep an eye on as well. I know there's a couple names we didn't get to tonight. Drake Bowen from Notre Dame, Rasheem Biles from Pitt, Austin Romaine from Penn State, Brian Boctor from Oregon, who's also a baseball player. Didn't get to those guys tonight, but wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of an in-depth preview for about 10 guys as we did last year, or last week, I should say, with the running backs. So some really interesting linebackers to kind of keep your eyes on for this upcoming college season. A couple of my favorites from this list. Obviously, Anthony Hill Jr. is going to get a lot of attention, but Torian York is an interesting one for me, as is Kyle Lewis, is becoming an early favorite of mine. I'll be tuning in certainly to more Pitt games maybe than I would have otherwise to watch Kyle Lewis play this year. And as we kind of wrap the show tonight, RJ comes in with the question, is Cook going to hold in then? Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. I think Greg Tomset made a prediction that he's going to have a phantom injury that keeps him out of the practice, but he'll be good to go by week 1, and he'll kind of be able to say that he went to the mandatory minicamp, but he didn't participate. That's, again, just some speculation, a prediction, a funny prediction, I would say. Not saying that he has any kind of injury by any means, but something to keep an eye on. And we will find out tomorrow as mandatory minicamp kicks off for the Bills tomorrow. And we'll see. Yeah, James Cook apparently is in Buffalo. So that is the report, and we'll see if he shows up there tomorrow. Hopefully, we'll see. It's still up in the air, but hopefully we will get Judge back for next week's show. And if not, we'll move on to a little bit of a mandatory camp reaction, and we'll do another summer scouting preview as well as we kind of get into the throes of the summer here before training camp starts. But I do appreciate all of you for tuning in tonight. Me going solo again. It's not the easiest thing, as I always say, but it is fun, and I do appreciate you all contributing in the comments section as always. So those linebackers, I'll put them up on the YouTube timestamps for you. So if you have any interest in one particular guy, you can tune in right to that time on the show, share with your friends as we get ready for this college football season as well, with a look ahead to the 2026 draft class, something new we're doing this year. Will help us with our draft prep as we head into the 2026 draft prep process, which again is still almost a year away, but never too early to start. So do appreciate you all for joining in tonight, and we'll see you guys next Monday at 9 p.m. And by the way, quick plug, if you didn't catch it, Eric and Ant did a film room at 7 o'clock tonight before Air Raid Hour with Osiris Torrance. So check that out. Those guys just kill it, continuously getting these guys to come on, current players on the team to come on and break down film with them. Tune into that. That's on YouTube already. They went live at 7 p.m. tonight, so that's ready for you to go and replay and watch on the Cover One YouTube channel if you haven't already. Yes, and as RJ says, the breakdown was great with Saibo. He's awesome. He's a guy that, along with Connor McGovern, I'm hoping the Bills have an eye on to the future and potentially have an extension, him as an extension candidate, maybe in this upcoming offseason. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, a lot to be seen and what happens with Connor McGovern as well at the pivot. I hope they get an extension done with him at some point during training camp. That would be music to my ears. So until then, and until next week, I will bid you all adieu and thank you again. And until next time, go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!